The company's CEO flew in on a Sunday morning. Without stopping at his hotel, he drove straight to the facilities manager's house. Standing on the front porch, the CEO looked tired and humbled. "We failed you," he said simply, "and we need to make it right." The offer was unprecedented. Immediate reinstatement with full back pay, a substantial settlement for discrimination, and guaranteed retirement benefits. But the CEO wasn't finished. He wanted more than just compensation. He wanted change. "We need someone who understands the importance of fair treatment," the CEO explained. "Would you consider taking on a new role? Director of Employee Relations." The facilities manager sat quietly, thinking about the past few weeks, the support from colleagues, the evidence they'd gathered, the strength they'd shown together. Maybe this was a chance to make real change. Monday morning, the company called an all-staff meeting. The operations director sat in the front row, still confident, straightening his expensive tie. He had no idea what was coming. The CEO's announcement was brief but powerful. The director was terminated, effective immediately. Security escorted him out, past the very employees he tried to intimidate. His confident smirk disappeared as he saw their knowing smiles. The next announcement brought tears to many eyes. Their former facilities manager walked onto the stage, not as a maintenance worker, but as the new director of employee relations. The applause was deafening. "Our company lost its way," he told the crowd. "But together, we're going to fix it." His first action: implementing new anti-discrimination policies with real teeth. No more empty promises, no more ignored complaints. The changes came quickly. A confidential reporting system was set up. Mandatory sensitivity training began. Retirement policies were revised to protect older workers. The company created a diversity and inclusion council with real power to make changes. The former director's job search wasn't going well. His discrimination scandal had gone viral. Job applications were rejected. Interviews ended quickly when companies searched his name. His expensive suits didn't seem so impressive anymore. He finally found work at a small company, several steps down from his former position. His new contract required regular anti-discrimination training and close supervision. His corner office was replaced by a cubicle, his authority limited by strict oversight. Back at Riverside, things were changing. The new director of employee relations kept his office door open, just like his maintenance office had been. Employees knew they could trust him. He'd been in their shoes. The company's clients started returning, impressed by the genuine changes. The stock price recovered. Applications for jobs increased, especially from experienced workers who'd heard about the company's new commitment to fairness. 1 year later, Riverside Corporate Solutions won an award for workplace equality. The man who'd started in maintenance and risen to director gave a speech about dignity, respect, and the power of standing together against discrimination. "Sometimes the best leaders," he told the audience, "are the ones who remember what it's like to be led. And sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones in corner offices, but the ones who quietly stand up for what's right." The story spread through the corporate world, a powerful reminder that karma is real and justice prevails. Companies started reviewing their own practices, worried about becoming the next Riverside scandal. As for the former operations director, he spent his days in mandatory sensitivity training, watching his replacement transform the company he'd nearly destroyed. His expensive suits hung in the closet, replaced by business casual for his much humbler position. Justice had come full circle. The man who'd tried to destroy someone's retirement had destroyed his own career instead. And the man he tried to dismiss as outdated was now teaching corporate America about the timeless values of respect, dignity, and fair treatment. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing others a better way forward. The crisis hit Riverside Corporate Solutions like a thunderstorm. The company's phones wouldn't stop ringing. News vans parked outside the building. Reporters cornered employees in the parking lot, hungry for insider details about the discrimination scandal. The company's stock price dropped 15% in a single day. Major clients started pulling their contracts. "We can't be associated with this kind of behavior," one CEO explained in a termination letter. Another client, a multinational corporation, suspended all ongoing projects until the situation was resolved. Inside the building, chaos reigned. The board of directors called an emergency meeting that lasted through the night. Video calls connected executives from across the country, all demanding answers. The company's reputation, built over decades, was crumbling in real time. The operations director's corner office became suspiciously quiet. Blinds drawn, door locked, he spent hours on the phone with his personal lawyer. Employees walking past could hear his voice rising in panic. "What do you mean, they have recordings?" Those were private conversations. Social media was having a field day. Former employees shared their own stories of discrimination using hashtag Riverside Discrimination. The hashtag reached trending status, drawing attention from civil rights organizations and workplace advocacy groups. Human resources was drowning in calls. Current employees demanded answers. Former employees wanted to file complaints. Job candidates withdrew their applications. Even the company's vendors started asking questions about their ethics policies. The company's largest client, representing 30% of their annual revenue, sent an ultimatum: address this discrimination immediately, or we're taking our business elsewhere. Their deadline? 48 hours. The board's investigation revealed more than they bargained for. The directors' discriminatory practices hadn't just targeted one employee, they'd created a toxic culture that was costing the company millions. Talented workers had quit. Productivity had plummeted. Legal risks had skyrocketed. Employees started wearing black armbands to work in silent protest. The maintenance team, still loyal to their former manager, worked strictly to rule: no more staying late, no more extra favors. The building's operations slowed to a crawl. The company's PR team tried damage control, but each statement they released seemed to make things worse. "We take these allegations seriously," they said, only to be met with thousands of social media comments sharing evidence of ignored complaints. Internal emails leaked to the press revealed board members had been warned about the director's behavior months ago. The chairman's inbox filled with angry messages from shareholders demanding immediate action. The crisis spread to other branches. Employees in offices across the country started asking uncomfortable questions about their own management practices. The company's internal complaint hotline was flooded with calls. More former employees from the director's previous companies came forward. The pattern of discrimination stretched back years, leaving a trail of ruined careers and destroyed retirements. Each new story added fuel to the fire. The director's behavior became increasingly erratic. Security cameras caught him entering the office at midnight, shredding documents. It flagged suspicious attempts to delete emails from the server. But it was too late. Every piece of evidence had already been backed up and submitted to investigators. The company's lawyers worked around the clock, but they knew they were fighting a losing battle. The evidence was too strong, the public outrage too intense, and the financial damage too severe to ignore. By the end of the week, the board had seen enough. The company's value had dropped by millions. Clients were fleeing. The media circus showed no signs of stopping. Something had to change, and fast. The chairman called another emergency meeting. This time, the decision was unanimous. The directors' actions had nearly destroyed the company. It was time to make things right, no matter the cost. The wheels of justice started turning quickly. The facilities manager's lawyer worked through the night, preparing the complaint for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. The evidence was organized chronologically, painting a clear picture of systematic discrimination that was impossible to ignore. "This isn't just about one person," the lawyer explained, spreading documents across her desk. "This is about a pattern of discrimination that needs to stop." She pointed to the stack of evidence that kept growing as more employees came forward. The EEOC investigator's eyes widened as she reviewed the case. The security footage showing harassment, the emails revealing premeditated discrimination, the voice recordings capturing biased comments, the financial records showing the pattern of forcing out older minority employees near retirement. It was all there, documented in crystal clear detail. Back at Riverside Corporate Solutions, things were getting interesting. The director strutted around the office, seemingly confident in his position. But the atmosphere had changed. Employees watched him with knowing looks. They had stopped scrambling to follow his unreasonable demands. Something was shifting. The company's legal team received the EEOC complaint on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the corporate office was in chaos. Conference calls were scheduled. Emergency meetings were called. The board of directors demanded immediate answers. How did this happen? The board chairman demanded during a heated video call. How did no one catch this? But people had caught it. They'd been documenting it all along, waiting for the right moment. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Other former employees from the directors' previous companies started coming forward. They shared similar stories: systematic discrimination, forced retirements, targeted harassment of minorities. The pattern went back years. Local news caught wind of the story. At first, it was just a small article in the business section. Then it grew. Corporate giant faces discrimination scandal, read one headline. Age and race discrimination alleged at major firm, said another. The company's phones started ringing. Major clients wanted answers. Business partners demanded explanations. The company's stock price took a hit. Investors were getting nervous. Inside the office, the director's behavior started changing. His confident strut became a worried walk. His demanding tone turned uncertain. He started spending more time behind closed doors, making frantic phone calls. The evidence kept mounting. The IT department discovered deleted emails that the director thought were gone forever. Security footage showed him entering the building late at night, presumably to alter records. But the original records had already been safely preserved. The company's reputation was taking a beating. Social media picked up the story. People shared their own experiences with workplace discrimination. The hashtag Riverside discrimination started trending. Human Resources was overwhelmed with calls from current and former employees wanting to share their stories. Each new testimony added another piece to the puzzle, strengthening the case even further. The facilities manager watched it all unfold from home, surrounded by supportive messages from colleagues. His phone kept buzzing with updates. "You won't believe what happened today," one message read. The director tried to delete files, but we already had backups. The lawyer called with updates almost daily. "They're trying to settle," she said one morning. "But this isn't just about money anymore. This is about changing the system." The EEOC investigation was moving at record speed. The evidence was too clear, too well documented to ignore. The investigator had never seen such a thoroughly prepared case of workplace discrimination. The tide was turning. The truth wasn't just coming out, it was roaring out, and nothing could stop it now. The director was about to learn a hard lesson about karma, justice, and the power of people standing together against discrimination. The truth started spilling out the very next morning. It began with a young IT worker who couldn't sleep after witnessing the unfair firing. At 3 a.m., she started downloading every email exchange between the operations director and HR about the facilities manager. Her hands shook as she uncovered message after message revealing their planned discrimination. By sunrise, the building's security team had quietly copied months of surveillance footage. Every surprise inspection, every confrontation in the hallways, every time the director had followed and harassed their former colleague, it was all there, time-stamped and preserved. The maintenance staff came forward next. They shared photos of the original maintenance logs, the ones that existed before the director started demanding changes and corrections to manufacture problems. Their phones were full of voice recordings from meetings where the director had made discriminatory comments about older workers, particularly targeting those close to retirement. "He thought nobody was paying attention," whispered one custodian during her lunch break. "But we saw everything. We heard everything. And we kept receipts." The evidence kept mounting. A junior accountant discovered suspicious patterns in the company's hiring and firing records since the director's arrival. The data showed a clear trend. Experienced employees over 50 were being systematically pushed out, with a particularly aggressive pattern targeting minority workers nearing retirement age. The break room, usually filled with casual chatter, became a hub of quiet rebellion. Employees shared stories in hushed voices, each adding another piece to the puzzle. Someone remembered the director's comment about cleaning house of the outdated workforce. Another recalled him bragging about saving money by forcing early retirements. But the biggest revelation came from an unexpected source. A former employee at the director's previous company reached out through LinkedIn. The same thing happened at his last job, she revealed. He has a history of targeting older employees, especially minorities. We never had enough evidence to prove it, until now. The facilities manager's detailed notebook proved invaluable. Every incident, every unfair demand, every changed deadline was recorded with precise dates and times. When compared with security footage and email timestamps, it painted a damning picture of systematic harassment and discrimination. The company's younger employees, who had watched everything unfold, had been secretly documenting too. They had recorded meetings on their phones, saved screenshots of discriminatory messages, and kept detailed notes of the director's behavior. Many had done this out of concern for their older colleagues, never imagining how important their evidence would become. One brave administrative assistant had even recorded the director openly boasting about his strategy. "Get rid of the expensive old-timers," he'd said, not realizing she was recording the conversation. "Replace them with fresh graduates who'll work twice as hard for half the pay. Nobody can prove anything if we do it right." But he was wrong. They could prove everything. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails showed premeditated plans to target older employees. Security footage revealed patterns of harassment. Financial records demonstrated discriminatory practices. Voice recordings captured explicit bias. And dozens of witnesses were ready to come forward. What the director had failed to understand was that a workplace isn't just a collection of individuals, it's a community. When he targeted their respected colleague, he hadn't just made one enemy. He'd awakened a quiet army of witnesses who believed in justice. The facilities manager's lawyer could hardly believe the amount of evidence pouring in. "In 20 years of employment law," she said, reviewing the files, "I've never seen such a well-documented case of discrimination." The truth wasn't just emerging, it was avalanching. And the director, sitting in his corner office, had no idea that his carefully constructed world of discrimination and harassment was about to come crashing down around him. The morning started like any other at Riverside Corporate Solutions. The facilities manager arrived early, as he had for 24 years, unlocking doors and checking systems before most employees had even gotten out of bed. The morning light was just starting to filter through the windows when his phone buzzed with an urgent message from the operations director. "Immediate inspection. Basement level. Now." His heart sank a little, but he kept his composure as he headed down to the basement. The director was already there, dressed in his usual expensive suit that seemed out of place among the building's pipes and electrical panels. Two HR representatives stood awkwardly nearby, clutching tablets and avoiding eye contact. "Can you explain this?" The director's voice echoed off the concrete walls as he held up a maintenance log. "These signatures don't match. These dates are inconsistent." He pointed accusingly at random entries, his finger jabbing the paper. The facilities manager adjusted his glasses calmly. "Sir, those are routine maintenance records. Each entry is time-stamped and verified by our computerized system. I can show you the digital backup." "I'm not interested in excuses," the director cut him off. "This is gross negligence. These records are clearly falsified." He turned to the HR representatives. "Document this." The facilities manager felt a chill that had nothing to do with the basement's temperature. He'd seen this pattern before: the sudden inspection, the manufactured evidence, the witnesses called in advance. But knowing what was coming didn't make it any easier. "Let's continue this discussion upstairs," the director said, his tone suggesting it wasn't a request. The walk to the conference room felt like the longest of his life. 24 years of memories lined the hallways. There was the water fountain he fixed countless times, the corner where he'd helped put up holiday decorations each year, the break room where he'd shared hundreds of lunches with colleagues who'd become friends. In the conference room, more HR representatives waited. Papers were already laid out on the table. The facilities manager noticed the timestamp on them, 8:15 a.m. It was only 8:30 now. They'd prepared his termination documents before even doing the inspection. "Your negligence could have put lives at risk," the director declared, though he couldn't point to a single safety incident in 24 years. "We're terminating your employment, effective immediately." The facilities manager sat there, straight-backed and dignified, as they pushed papers toward him. 3 months. He was just 3 months away from his full retirement benefits. A lifetime of work, of dedication, of showing up early and staying late, all erased in a 15-minute meeting. "Do you have anything to say?" the director asked, a hint of triumph in his voice. The facilities manager looked around the room slowly, meeting each person's eyes. Some looked away in shame. Others seemed on the verge of tears. He thought about the notebook in his pocket, filled with detailed records of every interaction. He thought about the emails saved by concerned staff, the security footage preserved by sympathetic guards, the recordings made by younger employees who'd seen the injustice unfolding. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice steady. "I do have something to say, but I'll save it for the right time and the right people." He stood up, gathered his dignity around him like a shield, and walked out of the room. As he packed up his desk, coworkers stopped by one, slipping him business cards, phone numbers, and whispered promises to help. They all knew this wasn't the end of the story. The director might have won this battle, but he had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the quietest people turn out to be the strongest. And sometimes justice takes a little time to arrive, but arrive it does. Walking out of the building that afternoon, the facilities manager didn't look defeated. He looked determined. 24 years of respect and integrity doesn't disappear with one signature on termination papers. The truth had a way of coming out, and he had evidence that would make the director regret ever targeting him. The real story was just beginning. The new operations director wasted no time making his presence felt throughout Riverside Corporate Solutions. His first month brought changes that sent ripples of unease through the building. The comfortable rhythm of office life, built over decades, started crumbling under his harsh new policies. Everyone noticed how he'd stand in his corner office, watching the facilities team like a hawk through the glass walls. His eyes would narrow whenever our facilities manager walked by, clipboard in hand, doing his usual rounds. The director's expensive shoes would click ominously down the hallway, following behind to observe routine maintenance checks that had been performed flawlessly for years. "Your response time is too slow," he'd say, even though the maintenance team was working faster than ever. "These methods are outdated," he'd declare, despite the system's proven efficiency. Every morning brought new demands, each more unreasonable than the last. The younger employees started whispering about the changes. They saw how their experienced colleague was being treated, but fear kept most quiet. A few brave souls would slip into his office during lunch breaks, warning him about conversations they'd overheard or meetings they weren't supposed to know about. One particularly tense Tuesday, the director announced a new efficiency initiative. The maintenance team would now handle 30% more work with fewer staff. When our facilities manager pointed out safety concerns, the director dismissed them with a wave of his hand. "Maybe you're just not up to speed with modern methods," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. The pressure kept mounting. Suddenly, every minor repair needed photographic documentation. Every supply order required 3 levels of approval. The director would show up unannounced during complex repairs, tapping his foot impatiently and checking his watch, making it nearly impossible to concentrate. The facilities manager's lunch breaks disappeared as he struggled to keep up with the endless stream of new requirements. His usual spot in the break room sat empty while he worked through meals, making sure every form was filled perfectly, every inspection documented extensively. Even then, the director would find something to criticize. "Your handwriting isn't clear enough on this form," he'd say one day. "This digital file isn't named according to the new convention," the next. Never mind that the naming convention had changed 3 times that week alone. Other departments started noticing the strain. The HR team would exchange worried glances whenever the director marched past with another stack of urgent demands. The accounting department noticed how maintenance requests that used to take 1 form now required 7, all needing the director's personal approval. But what really got people talking was the pattern they began to notice. It wasn't just about efficiency or modernization. The director seemed to have a special kind of hostility reserved for older employees, particularly those who'd been with the company the longest. One by one, familiar faces disappeared, replaced by fresh graduates who cost less and asked fewer questions. The facilities manager started keeping a small notebook in his pocket, documenting every interaction, every unreasonable demand, every changed deadline. He didn't make a show of it, just quiet, careful notes written during his rare breaks. He'd learned long ago that sometimes the best defense was simply paying attention. What the director didn't realize was that he wasn't the only one watching and documenting. The security team had cameras, the IT department had emails, and the employees, they had their phones. Every discriminatory comment, every instance of harassment, every unfair demand was being recorded, saved, and shared with concerned colleagues. The tension in the building was reaching a breaking point. Everyone could feel it, from the janitors to the junior executives. Something had to give. And when it did, the director would learn a hard lesson about underestimating people based on their age or position. As winter turned to spring, the facilities manager kept doing his job with the same quiet dignity he always shown. But behind his calm exterior, he was preparing for a storm that would change Riverside Corporate Solutions forever. For 24 years, everyone at Riverside Corporate Solutions knew they could count on their facilities manager. He was the kind of person who remembered your birthday, helped you jumpstart your car on cold mornings, and never failed to greet you with a warm smile. At 61 years old, he carried himself with quiet dignity, his salt and pepper hair and gentle demeanor making him a father figure to many younger employees. His desk told the story of a life well lived: family photos, achievement certificates dating back to the 90s, and a worn coffee mug his daughter had given him on his first day at Riverside. He'd been there through 3 company relocations, countless office renovations, and had trained dozens of maintenance staff who now held senior positions across the city. But everything changed when the new operations director arrived. The moment he walked through those glass doors in his expensive suit, something shifted in the building's atmosphere. He was all sharp edges and cold smiles, the kind of boss who measured success in spreadsheets rather than satisfied employees. The new director started making changes immediately. Young faces began appearing in place of experienced workers. Long-time employees would go into his office and come out with resignation letters. The break room, once filled with laughter and stories, grew quieter each week. Our facilities manager noticed the pattern but kept doing what he'd always done, taking care of the building and its people. He stayed late to fix the heating system when it broke down during winter. He remembered to stock up on salt before the forecasted snow. He even created a detailed manual for emergency procedures that the corporate office adopted company-wide. But the new director seemed to take personal issue with him. Suddenly, maintenance requests that used to take 3 days needed to be completed in 1. Project deadlines changed without notice. Email requests came at midnight, demanding responses by 6 a.m. The pressure was relentless, but our facilities manager handled it with grace. One particularly busy morning, while juggling 3 different emergency repairs, he received an urgent summons to the director's office. The maintenance records he'd carefully kept for 2 decades were spread across the desk. The director claimed to have found serious problems that mysteriously hadn't existed during last month's corporate audit. The facilities manager calmly pulled out his tablet, showing documentation for every repair, every inspection, every routine maintenance check he performed. His records were meticulous, backed up both digitally and in paper files. But the director wasn't interested in explanations. His mind was already made up. That afternoon, the facilities manager was called to a disciplinary meeting. He sat there, straight-backed and dignified, as human resources representatives read out accusations that anyone who knew him would find laughable. 24 years of dedication were about to be erased, just 3 months before his retirement benefits would fully vest. What the director didn't realize was that this situation wasn't playing out quite the way he planned. The facilities manager wasn't alone in that room, not really. In the weeks leading up to this moment, concerned employees had been keeping their own records. Security cameras had captured telling conversations. Email threads had been carefully preserved. And most importantly, the director's own words about outdated workers and his specific targeting of older minority employees had been documented. Sometimes the quietest people turn out to be the ones you should have watched most carefully. And sometimes those who seem easiest to dismiss end up teaching the most powerful lessons about justice, dignity, and the consequences of discrimination. The next few days would prove to be very interesting indeed.